Your Life in Sex Island, Chapter 4, Illustrious Immigration, page 102. We have already spent several $billion on fences that don't work. Boeing's very funny fence to stop the Mexican Central American immigration does not work, will not work, and maybe isn't intended to work. It is intended to make Boeing a lot of money for next to nothing. And we are probably past billions on kinky kooky fences. Here's another thing. Them fellas up in Washington are saying 20,000 or 23,000 more Border Patrol agents. They're great kidders, those Washington boys. Let's see. The Rio Grande is more than 2,000 miles as the crow flies. 5,280 feet per mile. I make that 10.6 million feet. 4 agents every 1,000 feet. 3 shifts comes to 127,000 agents. Oh wait, when you nab those little buggers sneaking across the river, you don't just put them on the western side of the highway and tell them to stick their thumbs out. You gotta put them in a corral, feed them, get a judge, find them guilty. It's a nice formality. Makes you look like you got clean hands. Legalities, you know. Get a paddy wagon. Oh, this isn't Boston. It's a wetback wagon. Get a driver. Notify the Mexican authorities. Drive south, release, go back north, repeat. DHS Secretary Michael Chertoff says it'll cost $7,833 per person. He is good if he's got it down that fine. I'm surprised he didn't add the 19 cents. So, for every agent you need maybe 9 white-collar guys. Total so far maybe 1.25 million guys. Now, if the CBP, that's the Border Patrol, is about as efficient as the military, for every agent in the field you need 20 support people. Now we got about 23 million jobs created that the politicians can brag about. We's creating jobs. We Washington boys is creating jobs. But now we got to raise taxes to pay for all those jobs we've been creating. They don't get any dumber than those Washington boys. They's all lawyers at base. Going by what our embassy employees cost, those 23 million guys and gals are going to cost about $500,000 each. That's about 11 trillion per year. No problem, we got it. I see the president is asking for 8.2 billion for embassies. The Post-Dispatch put it on the second page, just behind the football game, so you'll never notice. Oh, I forgot. There's going to be boys and girls aged in them little sacks along the border. Get lonesome at night in that Lone Star State, we're going to have a budget for condoms. Or babies and abortions, and they's more expensive. Now, I could just hear them congressional budget experts, if they ever got wind of my rant, saying that boy's numbers are absurd. Them numbers are ludicrous. Now I have to bow down to those spoiled rich city kids working in them Washington towers. All that granite and hand-carved maple and $5,000 suits and $1 million CPAs, they must know something. Absurd those numbers are, even ludicrous. But which way, high or low? Now I've worked with a lot of accountants in my time, and I have to admit that they are super at predicting last year. They can split the penny to 8 decimal places. Unfortunately for engineers, we always had to predict next year, a mite harder. We had to guarantee that the machine we were going to design, as soon as we figured out how to design it, would make 3,600 widgets per hour. And we could design and build the machine for $60,000. Oh, plus or minus 10%. And we had to bet our soul, and oldest kid, that we would be correct. Then the accountants would get a bonus because the machine saved $200,000 per year, and them widgets being cheaper and better would jump off the shelf. So of course the salesman would get a big commission. And the engineer would get his ass chewed because it only produced 3,590 widgets per hour. Downtime for lunch, you know. Forgot to consider that. I have done a lot of estimates and cost projections in my time, and I can tell you that those numbers are neither high nor low. I've done blue sky and black water projections, but this is a guess, not a projection. Here's the nub of it. We're not going to spend $5 trillion or even $5 billion to build that wall. Nor are we going to spend $11 trillion per year to try to make it work. That's too much money for the first 5 or 10 years. They'll spend maybe $500 million to build the wall over maybe 7 or 8 years. And it will cost maybe a couple $100 million to operate it every year. And like the war on drugs, every couple of months there will be a report issued, period. The report will one time say, crossings are down and therefore our plan is working, and it will work that much better if you give us more money. We still got a few leaks. The next time the report will say, hey, crossings are up, better give us more money. Sort of like NASA, you know. It grows and gathers like a slime mold. Now here's the rub of it. If we spend as much as my estimate, it still wouldn't work. I'd like to use the metaphor of a childhood game we used to play called Tom Tom Pull-Away. It was a tackle game with players running between goals and players in the middle trying to tackle them. But the description wouldn't be worth the candle. See, those old metaphors don't work either. It wouldn't be worth the effort or the electric light bill. The odds are high that you know a little bit about football. Even Nixon did. So I'll use that analogy. Football, you've got a 50-yard wide field with 11 guys trying to move in one direction and 11 guys trying to tackle them. I make that almost 4.5 yards wide per player. Simple game. The reality, the workability of the game is that often the guys trying to move do. Now imagine a 3.5 million yard wide field with 30,000 guys tackling. That's 10,000 per shift with no weekends and no vacations, and forget about sick days. 352 yards wide per player. Those 10,000 guys and gals per shift are trying to tackle 100,000 guys moving through. Imagine that the tacklers are coached by George W. Bush and the runners are coached by Vince Lombardi. It's a sick joke. Charles Adams might have used it. But no one will laugh unless you hate America. This is very serious, you know. National security, you know perfectly well. We're keeping you safe. Certainly the runners could send a sacrificial goat through a couple 100 yards upstream, like drawing off the piranhas. When the tacklers are chasing the wild goose, the real runners will scurry through downstream. The goat gets paid and is reusable. He could make a nice living. Purchase the book now by clicking on the link in the description below.